Okay, you drive a Toyota.
I have a Toyota Sienna van, that's correct.
They've been in the news lately.
Yes, they have.
I was reading a story about a guy, I can't remember the state, I want to say Connecticut, but I'm not sure. An Asian gentleman with a wife, 4 kids, youngest is 2. He was driving a Camry, and his Camry, he says, suddenly accelerated on a ramp. He struck a vehicle. He says he tried everything he could to stop the car. Struck a vehicle, killed 3 people. In his trial in 2007, he explained or testified that he did everything he could to stop. Didn't know why the car was accelerating. Apparently, the jury didn't buy it. The victims' families testified at the trial, emotional testimony. At the sentencing, they testified. They wanted him to get locked up. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Today, it's known that that car had issues with the cruise control, which could apparently cause sudden acceleration, and that this was a textbook case of this issue with Toyota. I see these folks, Mr. Toyota and the U.S. CEO testifying, choosing their words very carefully. I hear folks talking about recalls. Should these folks go to jail? Should they be locked up?
Well, I think if they knowingly, first of all, I think the federal law provides that if you knowingly commit these types of acts, there are criminal violations, and if they knowingly did this, which it wouldn't surprise me if they didn't. Yes.
This guy was sentenced to 8 years in prison for involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts, or perhaps vehicular, something like that. He didn't intend to kill anybody.
Yeah, I don't think he was. Who I'm referring to.
But what I'm saying is, if it is possible for you to be operating a machine and cause someone's death and be charged, even if you didn't intend to kill anybody, but they ruled it was perhaps your negligence, or just you caused someone's death and you're going to pay for it, then it sounds like there's a higher standard for Toyota. I mean, I
agree.
It doesn't seem, if they invent this machine that's killing people, it would seem to me that they're guilty of negligent homicide as well, times who knows how many.
I think that what you're starting to see with Toyota, and you and I have known each other for a while, so I litigate against, part of my law practice is actually litigation with manufacturers. I've litigated with Toyota over franchise agreements on behalf of dealers. I've currently got a litigation going on right now with Nissan. So this type of area is an area that I'm fairly familiar with, and I do think that there are a lot of decisions made by car manufacturers, to be frank with you, that are made on a financial basis and not on a basis of safety. And I think that what is now starting to occur is, I think Congress is pulling back the onion, so to speak, and seeing how this decision was made. And I think at the end of the day, that if it's determined that Toyota executives knowingly understood the risk that was involved and then made decisions to move forward because financially it was smarter for them, it was cheaper for them to build the car, then I think that they should be subject to criminal prosecution. I don't think there's any question about that. With respect to the gentleman, if they determine or are able to determine that the cause of the accident that he was involved in was as a result of what we're seeing right now, then I think that there ought to be a claim filed, and he should be granted clemency. And I imagine most of the victims' families would feel the same way. I got to say something else personally. Since this happened, and since I'm somewhat familiar, this is an area of specialty. Out in Little Front Royal, Virginia, actually, I developed a niche as a young man, and I try a lot of cases around the state and even some in other states, in Arizona and other places, that involve these types of issues. And to be frank with you, as soon as I heard about this, I do get the automotive news and I'm aware of it. My wife and I have not engaged in our Toyota Sienna van the cruise control anymore. And I think the recalls are probably going to be the start of this. And I think probably Toyota, which was growing very quickly, took their eye off of safety, probably more towards profit would be my opinion, and it has led to a tragedy. It reminds me of the cases when I was still a boy of Nova, where you had the impact, the rear impact that blew the engines up, and that turned out to be a defect. It was like a 10-cent part that they could have spent another 15 cents or something like that, and made it plastic instead of steel, which did the igniting in those cases. And I think if that turns out to be the case, I think you're going to see Toyota executives probably be subject to some criminal prosecution. And I think, if you get a gung-ho prosecutor out there to do it, and I think the second thing is this will make people think twice about the quality of Toyota, as it should. I think the reality is corporations, in my experience, and I've battled with them, and I've represented on their behalf and fought against them during my profession. What feeds my children, and it's been my experience: the bigger they get, the more dispersed the decision making is, and what tends to happen is sometimes, instead of concentrating on the customer and the safety of the customer, in the case of car manufacturers, they concentrate more on the bottom line, the financial cost of making the vehicle versus the profit margin. And that, it kind of sounds that way to me. I don't want to prejudge it, but that's what it sounds like to me.
You own a Toyota. Would you buy another one today?
I would probably, I'm not right now, to be frank with you, the way the economy is, I'm not planning on buying any vehicles anytime in the near future. I'm going to hang on. I've got a 2006 Toyota van that we bought when the babies, were born, and my children ride in that car every day. And then I've got a 2003 model car that's in both of them are over 100,000 miles driving back and forth to Richmond. But probably I would think long and hard about a Toyota, and I think most people feel that way now. I mean, that's what happens as a result of this to a company, is when this sort of thing happens, not only in my mind, but in everybody's mind, they think twice. And they think to themselves, and that's why it's so important, consumer reports, things of that nature that really look closely at vehicles. You can never completely protect yourself against things like this occurring. But certainly, reading these sorts of periodicals and things of that nature and making a decision to buy a car is very important. And I got to admit, right now, Toyota would probably, I'd have to think long and hard about buying another Toyota. And I got to admit, with the van, I'm a little concerned about it.
He said, call me as soon as you get home, honey.
That's right. That's exactly right.
We're here in the Front Royal office of Delegate Clay Athey. Thank you so much for inviting us over here today.
Always good to be with the publisher of the Shenandoah Times and the Warren County Report.